Why are you licking my Kindle's case? Knowledge is tasty, but not like that. Dog, if you lick my textbook, I will end you. It's only worth about 20 cents back to the bookstore anyway. What do you want? I fulfill your every need. You're tearing me apart. I know he's crying. I am a man of many hats, both figuratively and literally. And one of those many hats that I may wear, even if I'm not actually wearing one, is that of a movie lover. And today I took some friends to see Skyfall. After a wonderful dinner in which we stared at the people who frequent Steak and Shake on a Saturday night in Kentucky, which is an entertaining crowd to be nice about it. We watched a version of Skyfall that's been run through a cheapo movie theater projector so much that it looks like Grindhouse. Like straight up 70s Grindhouse. It was kind of interesting to watch a movie that is already about anachronisms and how old things should be not the best anymore. To watch an old version of that film reel, found that to be a nice little touch. So, Skyfall, if you've been living under a rock like me, is the newest Bond movie, and if you haven't seen it yet, you probably should, and you probably are going to, because everyone watches the new James Bond movie, whether or not they like Bond or not. As a kid, I liked the idea of James Bond's, like, gadgets and all that stuff, but as I grew up, I started to get bored with the tropes of it, like, Bond always has this really, really awesome chick with him who always gets in trouble, or turns out to be the bad guy or something like that. Like, his partner always ends up getting him in trouble in some way. That gets old fast. And even my family, even my dad, who loves Bond movies, started to kind of shift away once Daniel Craig showed up. I love the Daniel Craig movies, but as my dad puts it, the Daniel Craig movies reinforce this new trope that's shown up in movies where apparently to have a good hero, you have to physically beat the out of him. He not only has to go through a baptism of fire story-wise, he literally has to have the beaten out of him before he can be a good hero, apparently. Skyfall is pretty much the movie that answers the question, why would Bond exist in a modern world? MI6 is not fighting the Cold War anymore, there's no point to him. It's like the movie itself is trying to figure out why Bond still exists as a character, as in character and out of character. Why do these movies still happen? I mean, it's even when Pierce Brosnan was Bond, it was still a kind of different world than it is now. And on that note, the movie does a really good job of setting up Bond to be out of date. Daniel Craig plays his character really old, and the movie makes a huge point of making it out that Bond really isn't up to spec anymore. And the entire movie, it feels like it's going to be some kind of Pachow moment where M and Bond look like badasses and everyone's like, oh no, we do need MI6. Let's just put it like this. The end of the movie, if it's the movie about dispelling anachronisms, sets it up so Bond has the exact MI6 that Sean Connery's did. I find that really cool. So that's my brief little thing about why you should watch Skyfall. Today was interesting. Not only did we watch Skyfall, but I hung out with 4 of my close friends, one of which has a YouTube channel and does things like this.
Hello. I'm going to watch Skyfall with my friends.
Anyway, so the other day I filmed that book video. After I went on about how many books I've been reading, I went on a rant about Game of Thrones. That rant serves to be kind of interesting, but I threw it out because I felt it to be too long and not focused on what I was trying to achieve with that video, which what I was trying to achieve was making something short so I didn't have to edit a lot. So with that, I decided to come back and talk to you guys about it. more focused, because it's actually the third time I've filmed this. So Game of Thrones paints me as a hypocrite, because when I first started watching the show, I didn't really like it because everybody liked it. If someone tells me to watch a movie and they give me, like, kind of like my Skyfall thing I just talked about, I didn't say Skyfall is the best movie ever, oh my god, you gotta see it. I said, Skyfall's good, here's why. People that tell you to watch something 1,000 times over just because it's good, and they'll, not give you any details as to why, besides it's a blank movie, you should watch it. Or a blank TV show, you should watch it. Or a blank book, you should read it. It's just, I don't like that, because it makes me feel like I'm either gonna watch it and love it, and then it's like, hey, I just read this book, it's fantastic, and everyone else that's already read it is like, yeah, pretty good. I don't feel like talking about it because I've already talked about how awesome it is before. Yeah. That takes all the fun out of it. And if I watch it and I hate it, then they think I'm an idiot. Or I think they're idiots for liking it. I use idiot very loosely, but you get what I mean here. This is the best thing ever to a lot of people. Now, I could go into lots of, angles of why I didn't like the first episode, but let's just say I didn't really enjoy it. I was under the impression Game of Thrones was more of a, like, Lord of the Rings or Terry Pratchett-esque fantasy where there's magic and weird stuff. And so when I watched the first episode and saw that the fantasy elements were just a bunch of people that looked like they were hopped up on PCP, it didn't really suck me in. So I didn't watch the next episode. Then I met aforementioned crazy lady and another guy who really liked Game of Thrones and gave me legitimate reasons as to why I should watch the show. So I watched the second episode, and it's so fantastic how much entertainment changes people. Because I went from not really caring to loving it in one span of an episode. From the end of episode 1 to the end of episode 2, complete change. I realized that I was introduced to the fact that Game of Thrones is a character-driven story, and pretty much, people are gonna kill me for saying this, but Game of Thrones is like Firefly with horses. Actually, Firefly has horses. Game of Thrones is Firefly with things I can't say without spoiling. I love watching shows where the bad guys aren't black and white. Oh yeah, and even though the bad guys aren't black and white, there is someone whose moral standards are very black and white. I don't think a show has ever made me want to stab a miner until Joffrey. He makes a hatred of 1,000 suns burn deep within my soul. Actually seeing him sit on the Iron Throne. I think that was the moment I realized I had become a fan of the show, when I saw Joffrey sit on the Iron Throne, and there was legitimate passion inside me that said, you don't deserve to sit there. Like that, it's a freaking chair made of swords, who cares, But I was so into it, and it happened so fast. Game of Thrones is like Firefly with... Game of Thrones is a... All of the aforementioned friends are now talking on Skype and making beeping noises while I'm trying to talk. After making misconceptions about Game of Thrones as a storyline, I already felt kind of hypocritical. And then I had one more misconception, and that was about George R.R. Martin himself. As far as he's concerned, all I knew about him before I watched a video on YouTube last week was that he wears a bitchin' hat, and his views on writing violence and sex in books are pretty interesting, I feel, given that he's pretty open about it, and I really like transparency about authors when they write things that people consider, yeah, instead of just being like, it's part of life, and just hiding behind that. I watched it, and I have this conception in my head, and apparently a lot of other people do. If you write a lot of fantasy books, you have to be from the UK. Jasper Fforde, Wales. Terry Pratchett's Discworld series, England. J.R.R. Tolkien, English. J.K. Rowling, English. George R.R. Martin, Jersey. No, not that Jersey. That Jersey. Yeah, seriously, man. So I decided to do a little test and went on Facebook and said, it's hard to make fun of New Jersey when Kevin Smith and George R.R. Martin are from there. I got at least 4 or 5 people responding going, seriously, he's from Jersey? There's one message I want you to go away with in this video, is that preconceptions about things are very rarely correct. Preconceptions are important about some things. Stepping on a snake, having sex with a crazy person, things like that. Judging someone by their cover, like we all do sometimes, is never really good. If I judged Ashley by her vlog,
Goodbye, I'm tuning next week.
now, to be fair, I probably would still talk to her just from the is she that crazy kind of aspect. But judging people from the outside is never the way to go. And I know this is something that's been browbeat into you since you first watched Barney, but bear with me. It's most important to focus on that in books because you can't really judge characters without getting into them. My English teacher literally wrote a book about preconceptions. The entire book is made of characters who are just weird as shit, and it constantly jumps perspective to people who don't know these characters and their preconceptions of them. So that leads me to your second homework assignment. Yes, I haven't forgotten about these. For those of you that wish to see your first homework assignment, just go check out the video up there somewhere. I don't know where I'm going to put it in the editing. Oh! And then once you've done that, I suggest you go and find one character out of a book you've read or out of a show you've watched that you had a preconception of until you found something out about them that completely changed your impression of the character. Now, I'm not talking about some big twist about they're the bad guy or whatever, but something personal about that character you didn't know until you actually invested time into it. Now, the whole point of these homework assignments is to get you A, reading, and B, thinking, but I'm going to try and tie them all together by the end of, let's just call it the first semester of these vlogs. So, thank you for watching me ramble about Skyfall, Game of Thrones, and Preconceptions. Hopefully I'll have a new video soon, and go check out my other ones if you like me. I don't know, something to keep you busy, I guess. Have fun out there.